Leslie Hervey, Clerk to the Board.
Good afternoon. I'm County Commissioner Denise Driehaus.
Jeff Aludo, County Administrator.
Charlie Anderson, the Prosecutor's Office.
Thank you. Stephanie Summerall Dumas, President of the Hamilton County Board of County Commissioners. And we have some very important items to come before us today as we look at our budget for 2023 and our budget requests that may come forward from each department. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Commissioner Alicia Reese.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we're going to get started. John, would you like to come up and get us going?
Thank you, Commissioners. Happy to. We have 6 departments with us today, so we're going to jump right in. But this is the second of our meeting sessions with various departments. We'll be continuing them for the next 2 weeks through the 27th of the month, and a good lineup today. In fact, several of these departments were talking to each other and asked to present at the same, on the same day. So we're happy to have Juvenile Court, Court of Domestic Relations, Job and Family Services, the Board of Elections, the Probate Court, and the Court of Appeals with us today.
Okay, let's get started then. Juvenile Court. Carla Gunther. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. How do I turn it, John? Thank you. One little detail, right? You are. Great. So I really want to thank the commissioners for your leadership in the last year and a half. It's been a crazy ride for all of us. And we're really appreciative at the court for the support that we received both from the board as well as Mr. Aludo. So he's really helped guide us through some very difficult and challenging times. Want to hop right in. One of the biggest challenges for us in the last couple years has been around issues of staffing and compensation. The court was in a position with your support last year to do a comprehensive pay plan change for our workforce. And that really made a very meaningful difference both with retention and recruitment, with one little area, and I'll talk about that area where we continue to experience pretty significant challenges, and that's those hard to fill positions at our youth center or detention facility. We also kind of struck a compromise there, so we were able to move our staff to $20 an hour, still having some challenges bringing people in the door at that rate. And we did a tiered approach, so it's 20 on entry, 22 after 1 year, and then 24 after 2 years. We also were in a position to be able to make sure that we were rewarding our veteran staff with making similar adjustments. So they got the $2 an hour differential as well. So that really helped with retention, but recruitment continues to be a challenge, and I'll talk about that a little bit more. These are a host of strategies that we've employed to try to attract folks to those hard-to-fill direct care positions. The area that we're pretty pleased with right now is we have a relationship now with Xavier University where we are doing paid internships and co-ops for students to try to attract young talent to the juvenile justice arena. So that's been a nice partnership. Right now we currently have 6 interns at the youth center in paid positions. So that's what we've been doing with recruitment and retention. I'm happy to answer any questions, but I'll let you move through that on your own. Certainly for juvenile court, and I'm sure this is true for all child-serving agencies, our workforce really is our greatest asset. And they're really the heart and soul of our organization. We're really proud that we've attracted a diverse workforce, both in talents, backgrounds, training, but also in demographics. So both on race and gender, we have a pretty equally divided workforce, totaling 304 employees as of this report. The challenge, which I've shared with you, is on that second bullet, which are those hard-to-fill positions at the youth center. We're still running at a 25% vacancy, which ordinarily might not be such a huge problem. We've had vacancies in the past. Really, it's the perfect storm right now. So with COVID, we have a medical observation unit. So all of our youth that are coming into our detention facility are moved onto a medical observation unit until they receive 2 tests of negative results, and then they're moved into the general population. But that means we have to staff that medical observation unit. The other challenge for us, and I'm sure Mr. Patton will talk about that in a minute, is these children's services kids who are making their way into our detention facility either after being away for long periods of time from their court-ordered placement or picking up some minor delinquency offenses, but they're hard to place kids. So these are kids with really complex mental health needs, behavioral issues, and they're sitting because all of the residential facilities around the state and even the country are backed up with workforce shortages. So it's really kind of bottlenecking those kids, and they're staying much longer than they should. So that's obviously a challenge. And then we've relied very heavily through the years on Lighthouse Youth Services being an opportunity to divert many of our youth from admission into our detention facility, and they're at capacity and can't accommodate those referrals. So that's been true for Children's Services, true for juvenile court. So we are working with other local providers to try to expand capacity for emergency beds so we can continue to divert from detention when it's appropriate to do so. Also, I want to talk about competitive compensation, and I've been pretty upfront with Mr. Aludo about the challenges around that. You'll be happy he doesn't always say yes, but it's been a challenge. So at the youth center, when you look at the other urban districts, for instance, Cuyahoga is paying their juvenile correction officers $24 an hour. We're starting at $20, so we're really lagging behind the urban jurisdictions. Franklin, I think, is at $23, $29. We also recognize pay is not the only incentive to get employees in the front door. Cuyahoga seems to be having some success. Franklin is continuing to struggle. So that's an issue where we've done this tiered approach. We've agreed to see if we can get more folks in the door. But that's something that's sort of an unanswered question that we need to continue to look at. I want to talk very briefly about delinquency trends, and less that you probably do care about the delinquency trends, but more about the fiscal impact that these trends have. So on the chart you're seeing, the bar graph is representative of youth committed to the Department of Youth Services or state facilities. And as you can see, we've done a really good job of getting that number to go down. But with 2022 and the uptick in violent crime, you're seeing that pop back up, and that's a problem, and we'll talk about that in a minute. The other area is the black graph that you'll see, and the black graph represents children who are bound over from juvenile court and being tried as an adult. Still a relatively small number. We had about 18 youth who've currently this year been bound over. That number will go up, obviously, in the next 3 months, but still that looks pretty good. Our placements are down. So I think our probation team has done a really good job in providing community-based supports to keep people in Cincinnati. And our assessment center has been a big help with that too, in doing screening and service connection with community-based providers. But in a minute, so I'll talk to you a little bit about the budget implications. As you can see on 4E, which is our residential placements, which I talked about, we're way down. So our allocation, that's really based on the number of placements you make. So that number has really plummeted. So our revenue in that area has gone down. Now the corresponding revenue, which is the Department of Youth Services commitments, because those have declined, it's a formula-based allocation. So they look at your commitments coupled with the number of felony adjudications to arrive at a statewide comparison. So that number, we went pretty dramatically up again. So that really is compensating for the 4E drop. So we're in pretty good shape in light of that. The concern is what I talked about on the prior slide, is with the DYS commitments starting to climb, that could impact that allocation in the next year. So I just want you to be aware of that. The other thing we're really grateful for Mr. Ludo has been the willingness, and Mr. Bergen, the willingness for us to work with some of the local dollars to create increased flexibility. Because our placement numbers are dropping, we're going to be able to use that money in a different way to support some of our staffing positions that had previously been in that 4E allocation. So you'll see a change in the revenue movement over to local dollars there, but the revenue will follow that. The other area, which I talked about already, is those hard-to-fill youth center positions. That's really caused our overtime to go up because we're keeping staff there sort of around the clock to fill those vacancies, which we've not been able to hire on. I will say that the retention at the youth center has improved with the pay adjustment. So we're not bleeding as much as we were, but there's still, it's a hard job, and it's still hard to keep people in those positions. So I would acknowledge that continues to be a challenge. The budget information, you should have both revenue and expenses. So I've sort of broken down for you. The total budget is $34 million, a little over $34 million. One thing that I think the court is really proud of is our ability to enhance revenue. So we moved from 2014 to only bringing in $3.2 million to now bringing in a little over $9.6 million. So that helps offset some of the general fund costs. We are asking for an increase in $1.157 million, and that really centers on the youth center pay, that tiered pay plan I had talked about previously, our health care and fringe costs. The other thing that's up for us is interpreters. We have a lot of families who are moving into our court who are not English speaking, so the interpreter costs have risen pretty dramatically within the court. And then there's a transport vehicle just for youth. You can see also on the expenses, we've broken it down by salary, benefits, operating, and then direct services for children. So those are contract services rather than staff delivery of services. And finally, just want to talk a little bit about what's on the horizon. Long-term expenses for the court involves our data management system. Like many of the county agencies, it's becoming outdated. We really have a desire to move to a web-based platform, and that's something that's going to incur some long-term expenses for the court as we look at transitioning from our current case management system to a web-based platform. The other piece, which I've shared with you today, is the variable nature of the placement funding, both at DYS and 4E. So that always creates some influx in our revenue. Want to just touch on very briefly the current condition. There's been a lot of deferred maintenance in our building, and it looks pretty shabby. We've been working with facilities to try to get at least carpet and paint, and the bathrooms really need pretty significant upgrades. So that's an issue within the building, and then we've had pretty frank discussions with the county about juvenile court. 800 Broadway is really less than ideal for a juvenile court setting. We moved from the first floor to the 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, 14th, and 15th. So for safety reasons, it's really hard to get from one to the judges' offices and chambers on 12 and 14. There's security issues. The nature of the building also makes Wi-Fi somewhat unstable, and that's been really difficult during COVID because of our use of remote technology. So those are sort of the issues we continue to struggle with. Not asking for anything specific on this, but just want to give you some heads up about that's the thing to come. So happy to answer any questions, comments.
Thank you so much for your presentation. And so the increase that you're asking for is related to the salary increase that we had done, and what else in addition?
So $600,000 is just for the youth center employees on that $2 pay increase, so they'll move up. So that's that. And then health care and fringe benefits, health care for court employees and fringe benefits, I think total somewhere around $400,000. And then the interpreter services went up about I think they're about $75,000 increase. And then there was the transport vehicles were just old. I think they were more than 10 years old. So that was around $50,000. So that totals the increase.
Thank you. And
Sure.
First of all, thank you for what all that you do and the staff over there. We know it's hard working in a facility such as that. It really troubles me, though, when we talk about that our young people are in a facility longer than they need to be because the placements are not available. And the number one rule is to put them in the least, not you, we know, the least restrictive environment. So you have young people staying in that environment so much longer. And so the question for me, and I heard you say you're working with partners and collaborating to try to get them out, but this takes a really deeper look on what do we do, because for some of those young people, it's the first time. And then they're in there longer than they need to be, and then where are they going to go next? What other things are they going to do because of the experience they had in there? So, I don't know, as a board, we can look at, what other providers we could use, and it sounds like that's what you're trying to do too, so.
We are, and Children's Services has put out a plea to the providers to try to expand crisis and emergency beds.
Right.
But it's been tough on the providers because they're struggling to meet their current requirements, and it's just the staffing issue that's impacted so many folks, so.
In crisis emergency beds, maybe 5 or 6 days, you need longer than that, so.
Some we do, for
Yeah,
sure.
for sure.
Yeah.
So I was looking at the 2023 budget, and just wanting if you can send me a comparison of what the 2022 budget looked like for services to children or
Sure.
operating. So if I can compare from 21 to now, that would be very helpful.
Absolutely, we can
Yeah.
do that.
And I think we need to probably list, as we look at long-term concerns and implications of the impact on our youth, staying there longer.
Yeah.
That certainly is a concern. I understand the structural challenges and the current conditions, but we need to document where we are with that and what we plan on doing.
Yeah, and
So-
it's not just cost, but
Yeah.
obviously well-being, so, yeah.
And so I'm really glad that we were able to increase and staff
Mm-hmm.
can stay and we can do, and also look at maybe what other incentives can we do to retain the ones that we have. So that's all I have right now, but thank you for this presentation.
Thank you.
Vice President Reese.
Thank you for your presentation, and I do share the concern that regarding our youth. I'd like to get numbers. I know with both juvenile and Jobs and Family Services, I'd like to see the number of what numbers are we talking?
Number of Children's Services children in detention?
Yes, that
Yeah, it's
could be in a
averaging right
different.
between 10 and 12 at any given time.
Okay.
That are sort of just waiting for placement. So they can go out as long as we can find a placement. So that's about the number we're averaging. But we track that, obviously. We have weekly meetings with JFS to talk about what is the status of the placement search. And they're working diligently. So it's not a criticism. It really is just a challenge right now across the state. So, but we do meet with them weekly. And there's a roster of all Children's Services kids in our detention facility each week.
Gotcha. And then I would like to see a comparison of where do we stand with other counties? You're saying 10 to 12. Are other counties lower, higher? Do they have any ideas or techniques that they may be doing? Or maybe we're lower than they are. Maybe they're 50 to 100. But
Yeah.
just to have that comparison, it kind of gives me a better
Yeah,
understanding.
I don't think we have great data on that. We definitely have anecdotal information. And I think the larger urban counties are not letting Children's Services admit their kids to detention, but they're spending the night at the agency. So you can say that's quality or not, but that's sort of where they're keeping them because they have the same problems. So my understanding, and Mr. Patton will be able to tell you, but I think my understanding is it's a statewide issue as far as the lack of placements. It's just how each county is managing it.
Gotcha. Thank you. My other question, going back to the competitive compensation.
Sure.
And I know that's one of the areas we're looking to, for some additional funding and to up the hourly rate. But you also mentioned that that's not just the only way. Are there other incentives that we should be looking at, or did you look at, or?
We did. So we did a recruitment and retention bonus to our employees, and we tied it to longevity. And that went into effect in April, and I think it runs, can't remember if it's September or October. We're running it through. So any new person that comes in, that a senior staff has brought them in, they're going to be compensated with a bonus. And then the new people get a bonus at 6 months and 12 months. So we've done that. But, the pay, like I said, in Cuyahoga, they're seeing good results, but Franklin is still really slow. Now, they have a lot of leadership changes going on there. I don't know if that's a factor or not, but they're not seeing the bump in staff at 20, I think they're at 23, 29. Cuyahoga's reporting they're seeing good candidates coming in the door.
So you're thinking the compensation and the benefits package is what you're hopeful? Is there any other?
Yeah, and opportunities for advancement. So we've really tried, like with the Xavier University co-op, we're trying to get young college grads who might be interested in the field of juvenile justice start in our detention facility and then be able to advance through our probation department. So that's one of the things we would hope to attract new employees, and that's why we're trying to work. We're in communication with UC now and Thomas More and NKU as well to try to do something similar to bring in young talent. And then they can advance. So we really do have opportunities for advancement. It's just getting them in the door and getting folks who want to work with kids in that way, because it is a really challenging job.
And in your report, I appreciate you were talking about the inclusion that you're proud of. Is that also with upward mobility?
It is. So it drops off a little, but you'll see, and we can get you the data, but our management team is comprised of, I think it's in the high 30 percentile of individuals of color. I think it runs around 38% in management. So it's not quite the same, but it's pretty good.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay, great. And then my last point is, I know you're not asking for funding today, but I know as we look at, I just want to ask the administrator, as we look at facilities, I know we've got a number of them around the county, and I did also bring up the juvenile. I thought about, power washing at least on the outside,
Yeah,
and
it's
I
looking a
was
little dingy,
told
right.
that can't happen because of some structural issues, which then got me a little even more nervous, because if you're bringing in new people, young people, they want to have some place that looks nice. It's a beautiful historical building, but maybe I'd like to hear from the administrator just an update on the building for juvenile, and is this part of our, I know we're not talking about that part of the budget today, but is it something that we're looking at our facility plan?
Yeah, it's definitely within our capital facilities plan. It is, this particular building, 800 Broadway, suffers from what a lot of the buildings constructed at that time do, and that relates to the facade and how the facade was initially attached to the structure of the building. So we have this same issue with a lot of different buildings in the county. We operate some old buildings, so we are working on a funding and a financing plan for that. I don't have a direct answer for when that project is going to be initiated, but we'll talk with facilities about whether there are some other options we can do in the interim, just to make sure that from an external optics perspective, the facility looks clean on the outside as well.
Okay, and you did also say that you looked at other options about moving and the cost was higher. Just people are watching, so I just wanted them to know when you talk about this facility.
We've looked at other options in the past as it relates to the consolidation of various courtrooms and courts throughout the county. We've looked specifically at the issue of juvenile court and consolidating in other locations. The cost associated with that was very high. At the time, I think it was even in the $70–80 million range to do that. There's also, and maybe even more importantly than just the numbers, are the operational efficiencies associated with JFS and the different agencies, both public and private, that they work with in the downtown campus area that are necessary in order to serve the needs of kids effectively and efficiently and quickly. So we've looked at all of those things. We still obviously constantly keep everything on the table. But that was why those conversations in the past had stalled in terms of a complete moving of a facility.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks. Commissioner Dreehouse.
Thank you. I only had 2 questions, but now I have 3. So I'm going to follow up on that, because I've always thought the Broadway building would be a great boutique hotel. It's beautiful, it's
People
old.
come through, right?
And
Yeah.
so we did do that study, and it's been a number of years ago. We had a facility study, but things have changed. And so maybe, we can ramp that up a little bit related to this building, because we did have folks that were interested in the building. Now, I don't know, after all the repairs were delineated for those individuals if they would have continued to be interested. But it does represent a pretty cool opportunity maybe for county operations. So, and the north building at the library was just redone. I just want to say that. So that's pretty close by. So there's like this, this overview that I think we need to put on all the buildings around the courthouse and Jobs and Family Services to see if we're kind of turning over every single rock. So I totally agree with you. My other question's related to your presentation.
Sure.
When you talked about the raises, and I suspect, John, we're going to hear this from all the departments, because we have made a concerted effort, the board members, current and past, to get closer to market rate with our employees, especially now, when it's very hard to recruit in many, many different areas, including yours. And so we did a market rate study. We tried to bring folks up to the market rate related to our comparative set. And so and the reason we're able to do it is because of the sales tax being injected into the sales tax we already had in place, and that has allowed us some flexibility, which I'm very proud of. I know others are proud of that work as well. But specific to what your report says, you talk about the increases. You noted the market rate increases, and it says to retain, attract staff, court implemented the $5 an hour increase for frontline employees and $6 an hour increase for supervisors. So are those increases related to the total then, did you say it was $20 an hour?
Yeah,
Is
so-
that, are we talking about the same employees here?
So we are, except that we were able to absorb that in 2021. So those pay changes occurred in 2021, the movement from 15 to 20.
Okay.
The ask in the little over $1 million relates to those employees who are now at $20 an hour. The way we advertised starting in April was to bring them in at 20, and then at year one, they would be at 22. In year two, I'm sorry, they would go to 24. So it's 20, 22, 24. And so that 600,000 is linked to that $2 increase that includes not only the new people coming in the door, but the people currently in those positions. So those are only youth center positions. That's all you're covering under that.
Okay, and that is, and again, we're referencing back to market rate here.
Correct.
These, okay.
Correct.
So those are the increases that we see in the 2023 and 24 projections.
Correct.
Because there's a bit of a jump there, and that's what that is. Okay,
Yep,
I
that's
just
what
wanted
the
to be
jump
clear
is.
on that.
Yep, that's exactly
Okay.
right.
Lastly, I know Hillcrest is not part of your budget, but the contract is under your purview. And so could you provide us, and Hillcrest is a place where young people are placed instead of being in a
Yeah,
more,
residential. Yeah, it's a
restricted
residential.
environment. And so the money goes in, the money goes out. It's not related to your budget necessarily, but you do have purview over that. Can you provide for us an audit of the last couple of years for Hillcrest? Because as has been noted, we're all concerned about the youth and where they're placed and how that treatment facility functions. And so if you could get that from Hillcrest and provide it to us as part of your presentation, I'd be really grateful.
Sure. We forwarded, I think, to Mr. Aludo, the one from last year, but I'm happy to forward the most current audit. So,
Be great.
And just to know, Children's Services is also communicating with rites of passage about could they create a cottage of crisis beds. So that's something we're also in communication with to see if that would be an opportunity to step some of these kids down from detention and keep them in Hamilton County rather than looking at out-of-county placements. So,
Thank you.
Yep.
Great. I had a question.
Sure.
The 2020 detention facility, what's the population in there now?
It's right around 90 right now. Yeah.
Is that high, low?
Hi, yeah, we're funded at 80 beds. And then what you're seeing are these 10 or 12 children's services youth that are sort of awaiting placement. And then the other challenge is, at any given time, we have a unit called Senate Bill 337, which are those youth who their charge originated in juvenile court, they were bound over, they're being tried as an adult, but they can't transfer to the Justice Center even though they're over 18 until there's a conviction. So that population is there for a very long time, some of them more than a year. So those are like, if you took those 20 or 25 youth, our population would be reasonable to manage, but it's that group that creates the challenge for us.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
Yes, I want to just follow up. Based on what you just said, I'm even a little more concerned. Maybe I'm not understanding it right. But if you're saying the bound-over youth, are they with the non-bound-over youth
They're
waiting?
separate units, so we maintain them in a unit. If they're over 18, they're maintained on a separate unit of youth that are awaiting trial in the adult system. So we call it a Senate Bill 337 unit.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure of that.
But many of them are over 18, so.
Okay. Now, the rites of passage, I just wanted to follow up with
Sure.
that. My understanding is Judge Carrie Bloom, I know, is pushing this and looking at it, and it was kind of brought to our attention by O.Z. Davis. Is that in this, my understanding that costs may go down with that program? Is that accurate or inaccurate? Would that affect your proposal to us?
So with rites of passage, it's a different funding structure. We do not fund rites of passage. We pay a per diem for youth placed there. So that's how it is now. Years ago, there was some cost allocation on the county as we transitioned from operating it ourselves to privatizing it, but that is gone out of the current contract. So we just pay a per diem rate for
Okay,
youth placed there.
okay. So there's nothing to look at an expanded service with that? Nothing to affect this budget that you're proposing to us?
There's nothing that's changing in the contract. I think we have another year or two in the contract. I'd have to go back, but I think there's another year or two left on the contract.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
Okay, thank you so much.
sure, thank you.
Court of Domestic Relations, Valerie Myers is here. Hi, welcome.
First, I want to thank the commissioners and Mr. Ludo for inviting me here today to talk about the Court of Domestic Relations 2023 budget. I would also like to thank our budget analyst, Rob Wagner, for all of his hard work throughout the year, but especially in his help with our budget. I will keep my presentation brief because I know you have a lot today. As you know, we're one of the 5 trial court divisions in Hamilton County, handling divorces, dissolutions, annulments, and legal separations, plus domestic violence civil protection orders. I want to speak to you briefly about our mission to provide greater access to justice for the citizens of this county. Our strategy for bringing them a more efficient resolution, whether that is through technology or adjustments to our processes, is critical for their success. Some of the adjustments in our budget over this year and next relate directly to this goal of providing justice. We're providing justice for not only indigent litigants that are not indigent but don't qualify for legal aid, and then those who have the means necessary to have representation. I'd like to take a moment to discuss how we're providing assistance through the services of our court. For indigent litigants, we have a family law clinic that offers free legal services to those who qualify through the Office of Legal Aid. One of the changes in the budget that you see this year is our family law clinic coordinator is now full-time. During the pandemic, we eliminated the family law clinic coordinator because the clinic was modified, excuse me, to function remotely within limited hours that were managed by other staff. We reopened the in-person clinic last year, and the numbers have risen dramatically. As you can imagine, with the cost of everything rising, more and more people are seeking help through legal aid. Excuse me. For context, in 2020, we had 91 visits with 71 different litigants at the clinic. In 2021, we were able to have 461 visits serving 360-plus litigants. In 2022, we've already had more than 600 appointments assisting close to 400 different litigants. Our full-time clinic coordinator recruits attorney volunteers and law student interns while ensuring that our clinic is complying with legal aid. She also has a dual role as a staff attorney, working closely with our judges and magistrates. Serving more litigants results in additional functioning expenses. With the cost of supplies such as paper and toner rising, you will see an adjustment for things like this in our budget for next year. In addition to the increased costs for the Family Law Clinic, our Self-Help Center is available to litigants who need access to a computer and resources, which again require us to provide some of the supplies they need to be able to seek assistance from our court. We've been working with the Bar Association, Legal Aid, and UC's Law Clinic to see if we can bring additional help to those who do not currently qualify for legal aid. As part of that, we're looking into things like limited scope representation, which would allow litigants to retain attorneys for reduced amounts or for limited purposes if they cannot afford to be represented through their case. But while we're working towards additional goals, such as the limited scope representation, we are finding ways to offer additional services through our court. Our dispute resolution department is one of a kind in the services we offer. From mediation, we offer pre-decree parenting mediation free to all citizens of Hamilton County, to our neutral evaluation, which is another dispute resolution avenue intended to reduce cost and conflict for our families. While these are not necessarily the unfunded mandates issued to us, these services are invaluable to the families we serve because they assist them, the families, and most importantly, the children during this difficult time. One of the changes you've seen in our current year's budget is we hired a dispute resolution specialist. This very qualified mediator and family law specialist not only mediates high conflict cases, but is able to provide parenting coordination services to indigent litigants. Parenting coordination helps high conflict parents navigate shared parenting or co-parenting for the best interest of their children. And parenting coordinators regularly charge anywhere from $175 an hour to $325 an hour, which can limit availability to citizens based on their economic status. Our dispute resolution specialist is able to provide these services to a population who otherwise cannot afford them. Another change that you will see in next year's budget is a request for a new position. We would like to hire a decree specialist. This is a new position that is needed for a number of reasons. The biggest one is to ensure decrees are processed and filed in a more efficient manner, providing for the timely execution of justice. The documents required to finalize a termination of marriage are complicated, and litigants often come to court to their final hearing without the complete and accurate paperwork necessary to finalize their divorce. This results in decree office staff, support specialists, magistrates, judicial staff, and the judges all spending time chasing down, correcting, and creating decrees for litigants. And this causes unnecessary delays in the resolution of the cases. Having someone who can prepare these documents at the court will help us to not only improve the accuracy of our orders, but also expedite the resolution of these matters for the families that are in our court. The ability to expedite the resolution of cases is tied with the second goal I want to address with you, which is our goal to ensure the timely administration of justice. As you know, we are under case management deadlines from the Supreme Court of Ohio. These requirements are important to the families who come to us in times of crisis. We're working diligently to increase our efficiency in case management in two different ways. The first way is where our training coordinator and compliance specialist comes in. In addition to doing training for the court, she is regularly running reports on all of our cases. So these reports are used to help the magistrates, the support staff, judicial staff, and the judges to identify and resolve any and all cases that need to be addressed. With 3 judges and 12 magistrates, plus all of the judicial staff and support staff, this is no small task. We are also looking for ways to become more efficient in providing timely resolution to our families, specifically through technology as well. We were one of the first domestic relations court in the state to have electronic filing. We're continuing to move towards more electronic flow of documents, which will save us time and honestly money. If we can reduce paper and printing, we can eliminate a lot of the rising costs of office supplies. I do want to make sure that I've specifically addressed the changes in our budget. Why are we increasing our number of full-time employees? Our court has historically had vacant positions. I just highlighted 3 restructured positions that we're using to make our court more efficient and to assist the families that come to us. But we are still requesting the equivalent of less than 1 full-time employee. Our budget also requests a raise for our employees. There are a couple reasons behind this request. Well, actually 45. We had to replace a significant number of employees last year. And it takes a long time to train new employees. And I think it's safe to say, having just been one of those new employees, it takes a long time to really learn a new job. And while new employees are learning, mistakes are made, they're less efficient. These are all things that hurt the public that we serve. We do not want to lose any of the highly valuable employees that we have. They work hard to serve the public who are likely going through one of the most difficult times in their lives. As you know, the cost of everything has risen dramatically. In fact, I'm sure you know, we reached a 40-year high in inflation this summer, 8%. That means that even with the raises that you graciously gave last year, our employees are still bringing home what equivalates to less than they would have at the same time last year. So it is not lost on me what we're asking. I'm simply asking that we recognize we need to keep these employees because it costs too much to replace them and they are too valuable to lose. In conclusion, our expenses are more than 95% personnel, and we will continue to be good stewards of the taxpayers' money moving forward. At this point, looking into the future, I think our biggest future concerns related to technology and our case management system, which I'm sure you'll hear more about, is outdated. Thank you all for the opportunity to be here today.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your presentation, your narrative, your summation of what domestic relations does. And so you probably are not very familiar, I won't speak for everybody, for our board, but we like things in our hands.
Okay.
We like to be able to read, compare, look at the statistics, and reflect back. I listened to what you said, but I'm speaking for myself, and the other colleagues can speak also. But we need something in writing to look at, okay? And so as you do that, it allows us to ask questions. We're a very inquisitive group up here. So I would say if you could do that. I heard your urgency about filling the new position, but if you can do that, and that will help you to better take advantage of this budget process. So I don't want you to be under the radar because we don't have anything to reflect back on. So I would say do that as quickly as you can, and not necessarily you, but someone will probably need to come back after we receive our information to be able to ask questions directly.
Okay.
Okay. Vice President Reese.
Thank you. And I concur with that, Madam President. And maybe Mr. Brueggen, I know he's reaches out, and he always gets us lots of paper and chart because we're dealing with numbers. You said a lot, but again, we do like to read, and we like to compare the numbers. And it really is helpful to see what you're asking for and what you asked for last year. What's the projected budget for this year? Because in last year's budget, we had a projection for 2023 that you would be at about $4,181,081. So I've got to see, does that fit into the projection? Are we under? Are we over? So, you know, when we're in this budget, and this is not to you, this is just in general for all departments that may be watching, we're looking at numbers, we got calculators out, we're adding, we're subtracting, multiplying, projecting. And so when you're dealing with numbers, we got to have the charts and all of those figures that helps us. And not only helps us, let me just go a little step further. I mean, we have to ultimately have a vote. But we are having this in the public, and people are watching, and they can go back on YouTube. We want them to be able to follow along if they wish, to understand what we're doing with their tax dollars. You mentioned another component. You said we gave a raise. It was nice, but now that didn't allow the people to take home more money. I wanted to see what that is as we're going into you know, we want to be competitive with the marketplace in terms of salaries. We understand people coming out of law school and those kind of things. They got a lot of debt on them, and we want them to come here. We want to be able to, you know, look at what's competitive with the other counties and other similar courts around. So it's a very important court. And so we want to make sure that we're looking and providing the right tools, but we're doing it in a fiscally responsible way, and that the public who are watching can follow along with what we're saying. So even when you have something on here, the camera goes from you to the screen, and the people can kind of follow along with what you're saying. So looking forward to seeing that in writing. And that's why we are having these type of hearings in advance, so that people get a chance to say, oh, this is what it costs. Oh, they're trying to recruit more people. Oh, they're losing people. Oh, this is why we're doing what we're doing. But I do want to look at the comparison, Doc, between what we thought we would have projected-wise in 2023 and where we are. We might be right dead on, we might be off, but just wanted to see what that is. And then the additional position, how does that affect our personnel line item? I see the and then what does the non-personnel line item, how does that affect us?
Just so I can be clear of what you're asking. You're asking for more than, I thought everybody had these, so I apologize. Are you asking for more than just a snapshot of the numbers that we were sent?
Yeah, so, and if I could just jump in, so, and maybe what we do is when we don't have a PowerPoint, maybe we'll work with Gabrielle to make sure that the two-pager is up on the screen. I think, Commissioners, if you don't have the two-pager, that goes into some detail on budget projection request and FTE changes, let me know, we can get those.
But it's more than the two.
I understand
Yeah,
that
yeah.
you're
No,
requesting
I'm just asking-
more than that.
Oh, yeah,
what you
we're
need
looking
from
for
us
some of
in addition.
these.
Okay.
You can get some from your other departments. These are what we're looking for. This Board of Elections, they're coming up. Jobs and Family Services, they got something. Hamilton County Probate Court got something. First District Court of Appeals, Juvenile Court, these kind of things, because you said a lot of things that you could put in some of the stuff in the PowerPoint, what you do, and then we get into the numbers.
Okay.
So that's a lot more helpful. As for me, I can't speak for everybody.
Well, I agree, but your narrative was perfect. If you can just put it in writing along with the numbers and how you came to that conclusion, so, yeah.
Okay, I would be happy to do that.
Sure.
Should I work with Mr. Aludo to get it back to you?
Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Commissioner Drew.
Hold on, man.
Did you see how quickly I was like trying to get out of the hot seat?
Well, and I am going to refer to the graphs that we were provided, because you had talked a lot about restructuring, trying to be more efficient with some added positions, trying to be more really effective at what you guys do. And so as I look at the Court of Domestic Relations chart and the graph, and I can see the increases there, I've also got the Domestic Relations Special Projects chart, which is a significant increase there. And so I'm just wondering, the positions that you mentioned bringing on, or those positions becoming full-time positions, are those positions being absorbed in the general fund budget portion of what you do? Are they also showing up in the special projects part of the budget? Is it both?
No, we have asked that those positions come through the general budget funds. We have historically used the special projects funds to kind of supplement shortfalls, especially related to personnel, so that it's helped us from having to alleviate positions in past years. Additionally, we use this to provide certain improvements for the court that our general budget can't absorb and we don't want to ask you to fund. We recently used some of the money to purchase furniture for the public spaces. It was badly needed. Our old furniture was more than 30 years old. It was dirty and breaking. We anticipate that we will be using additional funds to support some of our desires to modernize our court, including, but not limited to, some technology improvements.
Okay, so, and I do note that the special projects, the revenue there is in the thousands as opposed to the general fund, which is in the millions. So I do, I mean, it's a much smaller portion of what you're talking about. So I appreciate that clarity. So the positions are coming out of the general fund, and that's why we see the increases, or rather the estimated increases in 2022 and 2023.
Yes, as you know, special projects money it's limited as to what salaries can be taken from it, and I don't believe that the new position that we're asking for would actually qualify for that.
Okay, yeah, I just wanted to be clear, because there's a huge jump in the special projects. It's, as I said, it's in the thousands, so it's not as relevant to the general fund piece, but I just wanted to get some clarity as to where the funding for the increased positions was coming from. So it's all general fund money?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you.
Can I
Thank
go
you
this
for
time?
coming. Okay, you can go this time.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming, appreciate it. Yes.
Commissioner, I just want to clarify too, in special projects and in many of the restricted funds, especially the judicial ones, the budget numbers tend to be more speculative. So you'll often see increases in the restricted funds relative to current projections where they spend less than the figures that we put into the budget number, so we don't have to come back for an adjustment later.
Can I, while you're up there, John, can I
Sure.
just ask you, so and the Special Projects Fund is funded by fees and those kinds of things? There's no general fund money in there?
That's
right?
correct.
Okay, thank you.
Restricted. Okay, Job and Family Services. Director Patton, welcome.
Thank you, Madam President. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Thank you for your time this afternoon to go through our JFS 2023 budget. I think I have my pointer here. John told me to keep it brief, so the first three slides I'll go through is just to really context for people watching at home to sort of see the scope of the services we provide at JFS, and then we'll jump into the numbers related to our 2022-2023 budget. So first slide, clearly our mission, helping community today for a better tomorrow. And our vision is Hamilton County Job and Family Services will work passionately and collaboratively towards a community free from abuse, neglect, and financial need. So who do we serve at Hamilton County Job and Family Services? The numbers that you see on this slide in the middle column are point in time for 2021. Our largest program is child support, servicing 1 in 3 families. That's actually a lot higher. The number we usually see, this is based on a 2-parent family with 1 child at a minimum. A lot of the child support cases will have more than 1 child, so it's, in terms of citizens we serve, a little bit larger than that. And then clearly Medicaid is our second largest program at 1 in 4 residents served in Hamilton County. Okay, what we do, we're the largest department under the Board of County Commissioners. Our major duties include children's services, child support, workforce development, adult protective services, client services, which includes cash, food stamps, or what we call SNAP now, Medicaid, and child care assistance. We partner a great deal with our local government partners, a lot of whom are in this room now, and also private agencies to help us do the work that we need to do for the community. So an example of the contracts that we currently hold with our partners will include juvenile court, Court of Domestic Relations, who you just heard from, the clerk of courts, the Hamilton County Sheriff, and the prosecutor's office. So a lot of the funding we get directed from the state and federal allocations we get at JFS pass directly through those departments through the funds that we receive. Private agencies will include multiple foster care agencies. You just heard, and I'll just touch on this a bit, related to the housing situation. One of the major counties just had a story in the press recently about children staying at JFS. So I really want to just say I'm grateful for our partners and our system partners, juvenile court, to help work through challenges that we face with children that we have in common that need to be placed. And we work on that to avoid scenarios where we have children staying at JFS. Juvenile court is a partner. Some private partners would be Lighthouse Youth Services, Talbot House, Cincinnati Youth Collaborative, Santa Maria, Women Helping Women, just to name a few. That's a very quick highlight. And then finally, we're an accredited organization. We're pursuing accreditation again this year, going through that process. We're about to kick that process off soon. We've been successful in gaining accreditation over the last several cycles, and we expect that trend to continue. So our functional divisions, these are the divisions that are under the umbrella of Job and Family Services. Most of you know this already, Commissioners, so this is nothing new, and I'll get into the numbers here on the next slide. But our Children's Services Division is our largest division with 415 budgeted positions, consists of intake and assessments, which is our 2-for-1 Kids line, ongoing sections that handle child welfare casework, including foster care and adoptions. Child support handles enforcement of court orders, including conducting administrative hearings, handling modifications of orders, obviously along with establishing paternity support order, collection on current and past due support, and also client services, which we described a bit earlier, responsible for administering all of our public assistance programs, cash, food stamps, Medicaid, as well as operating the One Stop Employment Center. Just an update, we were just selected as the operator for the One Stop going forward in 2023. So we're entering into contract negotiations to remain in that capacity. I think I mentioned to you earlier when I first started that we had considered not pursuing that role, but we have good leadership in place. I feel good about that. We applied for the role. We just were awarded the role, so we're working with the Southwest Ohio Regional Workforce Investment Board to continue that relationship as the operator and also as the fiscal agent at OMJ. And then finally, strategic operations support. I'm posting a position, assistant director position soon there to cover our fiscal department as well as contracting, information systems, communications, and building services. And also, I just wanted to mention I'm joined here by Mike Hiles, who is behind me, who is our comptroller, just in case I get questions on the next few slides that I may not always have the complete answer to. So, next slide, I think you may have also seen, and this is probably a repeat of what was said earlier in terms of our most pressing challenges. Obviously, staffing challenges. We are entering into reopener with the union next month that we hope will be able to address some of the pay issues related to our union at this time. Obviously, high caseloads, disproportionate number of children of color in care, a high placement cost and lack of available placements, that was mentioned earlier as well, increase in the case complexity and family needs, Medicaid SNAP unwinding. We've gotten a reprieve briefly for that because the public health emergency has been pushed back. So we're prepared to deal with that when it comes, but again, we need to be ready to make sure that citizens understand what the implications are when those benefits change. And obviously unknown long-term impacts of the pandemic. The other challenges that I think are less pressing, but on that same slide that I think I just want to point out, bring attention to, is that we have poverty, racial, and economic disparity, opioid epidemic and substance abuse, domestic violence, and untreated mental illness. That slide is incorrect. This should say 2021. I got updated numbers yesterday. 55% of the families we serve have substance abuse, domestic violence, or mental illness as the reason children were removed. High needs in our community result in increased demand for our services, complex cases, staff turnover, and high cost. All right, so finances. Our total budget for 2023 is $281 million. Revenue is generally built on historical data, and all federal allocations are budgeted at the same level for 2022. And on that note, just want to point out a process that we use at JFS, been going on for years. You may have already heard of it, but how we determine allocations, how the state determines allocations to the county, is that we issue what we call random moment samples for all of our staff. And it's a point-in-time study that they have to respond to that tells the state what that particular staff person was doing at that time. They come all year round, they're random, and so we keep track of that, and state uses that information to determine what our allocations are in all of the program areas, with the exception of the levy, which is children's services, which is local dollars. But all of the other allocations come through that process, and we typically get a good indication from the RMS samples and from the state about what that looks like, and we try to adjust accordingly. We don't want to see a lot of people that were in the bathroom or out to lunch or things like that, because that impacts our funding, right? And so we really want to communicate clearly to our team members that, you know, once you get a random moment sample, and I think we get them in advance now, Mike, a little bit in advance, a few minutes maybe? No, we don't. Not okay. We try to make sure that staff understand that we need to have work being done so that we get the right amount of allocations so we can fulfill the role of the work that we need to do for Hamilton County. So that's how that budget is built typically. The overall budget increase is by 8.5%, $3 million for salaries and benefits for 2023, $19 million for program priorities expansion, and that's directly related mostly to children's services program and services expansion as a result of the levy and the feedback from the TLRC. Again, the challenges we face are workforce vacancies. This includes JFS as well as our public and private partners who also need help to execute the programs and services that we provide. Okay, so into the budget. The next two slides compare 2022 and 2023 budget by division, as well as a description of the allocation breakdown between administrative cost and direct services to clients. In this particular slide, child support includes a 2% administrative fee added to each order that remains local. Also, 17.5% includes juvenile court, court of domestic relations, sheriff, and the clerk of courts. You can see both on these slides that these budgets generally remain flat. For public assistance, 55% of the 2023 budget for 436 direct staff, and then 44% of the 2023 budget request is for services to clients and operating expenses. That budget is flat for public assistance. For child support, again, 2% administrative fee, which I mentioned earlier. 81% of that budget request is for direct staff services, and then 17% is for budget for other county department contracts. So again, that's juvenile court, clerk of courts, sheriffs, et cetera, that receive money through those allocations. All right. The next slide is our WIOA funding. So this is Workforce Investment Opportunities Act, funding for 13 staff across the WIOA array of employment services, relatively flat there, 30% for direct staff, 70% for direct services to clients. And those staff are at OMJ. These are Ohio Means Job staff that also work at Ohio Means Job, but they are employed by Job and Family Services. And then finally, Public Children's Services, largest increase you'll see there, close to $20 million. 20% of the 2023 budget requests are for the 424 direct staff. 8% of that 2023 budget request is for other county department contracts, and then 71% of the 2023 budget request is for services to clients. All right, as it relates to Children's Services Levy, just wanted to point out, because that is local dollars, and I know that we've done a lot of work there to make sure that we are listening to the community and making decisions related to services to the families that we serve. So some of the kinship care investments that we've made so far, invested in kinship stipend expansion, $2.7 million. That brings kinship caregivers up to par with foster caregivers that had not been the case for years. So we want to make sure that we have opportunities and placements for children that we have in our care that are directly benefiting from being placed with their kin. We want to make sure that they are on par with our foster care providers as well. Additional kinship programming, we have the Kin Navigator program, kinship support program through Beach Acres that assists kin with accessing resources, education, and training. New Life Furniture contract, a local nonprofit to provide furniture to kin, families, and parents, and transition-age youth. Youth Employment Services provide support to JFS-involved youth and non-JFS-involved youth. This is the Office of Youth we talked about before with the $5 million that is there. Emancipated youth stipends, we're working to stand this idea up, which would be that we would look at children that are emancipating out of our child welfare program to provide an opportunity for them to be paid directly to handle any expenses that they may have in the first year that they exit Job and Family Services. We're working to stand that up now, and the administration of that would be brand new. The YAP mentoring program, $600,000 for that, provides mentors to youth and is a community-based service. This is a smaller service provider. Homeless youth programming, $1 million there. Expand existing homeless supports for transition-age youth and community youth. Again, this goes back to what we talked about earlier. These children are typically involved in juvenile justice, behavioral health, and also youth in poverty. We're working with, through a contract right now to expand that for youth in our care. And then finally, independent living skills curriculum is a curriculum that will offer consistent content and skill building and training for all transition age youth. Right now that is inconsistent, and so we want to make sure we have a standard content for children that are transitioning out of our care that can help them gain the skills they need to be independent. Okay, and then last slide is increases by priority area, $1.2 million to divert expansion. This is our domestic violence work that we do in communities with law enforcement. And then community outreach partnerships currently have an RFQ that went out last Tuesday for community listening sessions that will give us additional feedback, in addition to the feedback I'm getting from our Job and Family Services Planning Committee members, but also community members, to hear directly from them about the services that they'd like to see us provide that we don't currently provide to the community. Transition Age Youth System of Care Analysis through My First Place. This is an organization that we're partnering with to really do a deep dive into what we're doing with transition age youth, to give us some recommendations for how we can do a better job systemically in supporting youth that are transitioning out of our system. Expanding the Youth Advisory Board through the United Way. And then finally, excuse me, working with the Office of Economic Inclusion on the Office of Family Voice. We're in the process of working with Office of Economic Inclusion to make sure that we can support an Office of Family Voice. We're working with Allegheny County, Robert and his team, to identify best practices where citizens that have been through the child welfare system are a part of the Office of Family Voice that is independent of Job and Family Services, that can help families that are involved in the system navigate that process in a way that we think is less traumatic, more informed, more supportive, but also more educational in terms of what that process looks like. And that is the conclusion of my presentation. I'll be more than happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you so much for your presentation. I just really have a basic question. As we look at all the increases that have been indicated, the TLR, the Tax Levy Review Committee, indicated that there should be an increase in the mental health levy. We agreed as a board, and we voted on that, and we'll put it on the ballot for the people to vote. Are you basing your increases on the fact that the mental health levy will pass? Is that where you're getting your increases from?
No, we are looking at what was allocated through the Children's Services Levy specifically, and looking at service delivery based on that number, and identifying providers in the community that we know or can deliver the services that are outlined in those recommendations from Tax Levy Review Committee. We haven't looked specifically at the other levies in association with that.
So is there some thought that when the levy passes, which I'm hoping it will, that you may come before us with additional increases in other areas?
I don't believe so. I believe that we're covered with the Children's Services Levy we have now, so we have opportunities in front of us that we need to take advantage of with what we already have. So we're doing everything we can to identify new ways of doing business.
Use that money.
Yes,
that you
yes,
already have.
correct.
Okay, thank you. Last question, as we look at accreditation, is that a 5-year process?
I believe it doesn't take 5 years, but I think the accreditation is for 5 years. Every 5 years, correct.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Vice President Reese.
Thank you for your presentation. Of course, all departments are important, but especially this one. This is the safety net of all of Hamilton County. It is no surprise. One of the things that I would like to see is moving from a what I call a mentality. I don't want the welfare mentality. I want to move to a consumer services mentality. We see a lot of people got hit with COVID, or economically, as well as from a health perspective. People are really struggling. There's an area of folks who may have never had to interact with us, but now have to interact. Very close family friend from years ago. Her son is grown, has his own business, and ended up having something on his stomach. Went to a particular hospital, not University Hospital, because it was closer to him. Was told that he couldn't come there because he didn't have the right insurance, because he's a small business and it's very expensive to have insurance as a small business owner, but ended up having to get rushed to University Hospital sometime later. They did tests and found out he had stage 4 cancer. Needed to get registered for Medicaid. Never had to, reach out at all, but now has to deal with Jobs and Family Services, even though he is a person that has worked and prides himself as working and paying his own bills in his own way. So we have a lot of different people that are coming through our doors in a variety of ways, whether it's through the portal online, whether it's through mobile services with the 513 Relief, that will expand beyond American Rescue only, or whether they're calling your office. And so one of the things I would like to see, as we're looking at money and investing in this program, I want to see an overarching change of what is now under your leadership now, going to be the new model of how we interact with folks, moving more to a customer service base because it's their tax dollars. So I wanted to highlight that. I've talked to you about it privately, but I wanted to put it out there publicly. One of the things that when I ran, that was my number one thing, and I talked to, like you said, you're hiring some people to talk to folks. This is the feedback I got from a lot of folks, both at the urban as well as the suburban areas with Jobs and Family Services, because you never know when you're going to need the safety net yourself. The other thing in your proposal, when you say who we serve, it's very interesting because we've got a population of 830,000 plus citizens, and the majority of our program is child support, 235,161 people. We're dealing more with child support than we are on some of the other services I thought was interesting. Children's services, we're servicing only 17,897 people.
Right.
And I would assume child support is running after someone to get them to pay child support.
Right.
So the services, direct services, was a little low, but Medicaid was very high, which is very, very important because I guess it's a certain amount of time that you got to reapply and those kind of things. And you're servicing over 236,414 people. It's interesting, the same amount you're helping with Medicaid is the same amount for child support.
Very close.
I think that's a large number for child support.
And child support is undercounted, mentioned earlier. That, based on the data we have, that's 2 parents and a child, minimum to create a child support order. We didn't count multiple children in those cases, so that number is
It's
probably
even
low.
higher.
Right.
Wow. So that's, woo. Then, of course, then you go to the food assistance. That didn't even hit the child support number. We're helping 114,715 people. Child care, very low considering the need for child care. And I would like to see in this proposal, even how we ever have to look at it financially, we want, and I don't want to speak for everybody, but I think each of us have expressed the concern for child care. The 3 of us were in Washington, D.C., and we expressed the child care was one of the number 1 issues. And so I think that number's kind of low. We've only serviced 17,484 people. We know there's more that's out there. So I'd like to see that in somehow the budget or how we're going to deal with it. The other issue outside of your department, I know I've said it, and maybe the other board members as well, to Jeff, our administrator, we want to look at how we can have daycare for our workers right here in some one of these buildings. So I know that, I think at least he's looking into that. I won't say I know he's looking into that. I think that's on the agenda. And then we look at the workforce development. That's almost the same as childcare, and I think that number can be a lot higher. 17,693 people on workforce development. We know a lot of people need to be put to work, so I'm glad that you put in for that to continue to operate the workforce board with SOARWIB. And then cash assistance, I want to put this out there because people put out, oh man, they're giving away money, they're giving away. We only helped 8,171 people with some cash. That's a low number. I know
It
people
is.
who are broke. So
Smallest program by far.
smallest program, and they'll run around, oh man, they're throwing money there. We only help 8,171 people. I know it's more that need help, and I know under your new leadership as you're coming in, we want to make sure that we're helping the people that really need help. And when they get the money, they're spending it back in the economy, and we're getting it back on the backside because we are a sales tax county. So when they go and buy something in Kroger's, you give them the money, they go to Kroger's, get the groceries, we get the money right back with sales tax. So wanted to highlight that. My other question, though, that I had for you, I'm very concerned about these jobs vacancies. And I know that we as a board, we have worked very hard to bring up the number to be competitive in the marketplace, benefits and those kind of things. I wanted to ask you, are there other things? Because obviously it's not just
Pay.
the money. Are there other things that you're seeing or that we need to look at to try to help get these people hired in here?
I think the biggest challenge has been across the board, but mostly in children's services. Obviously, pay is part of that solution. We've done some things around pay, but I also think the work that we've done with our diversity, equity, inclusion team to make sure that we are engaging staff and getting understanding about implicit bias training for all of our supervisors and our managers to ensure that the relationships and the communication that we're having on a day-to-day basis goes beyond just the work in some instances. Obviously, we want to make sure the work gets done, but we've invested into making sure that we have opportunities for staff to provide, I think, updated training, updated content for them to be able to do their work. We're a little bit behind the 8 ball on that. We do need to make some adjustments there in terms of a structured training program. It was really affected negatively by COVID, and I think that's making an impact on how staff feel supported. And so what we're working on with HR, Ed DeMerit, and our team at JFS, and Andrea Brooks, who is also working on this on my behalf, is to really bring back a comprehensive training program for all staff across the board that gets at not only diversity, equity, inclusion, what they need to do to provide good service to the community and the caseloads that they manage, but also relational training that helps us be an employer that people feel good about when they come to work. We do a difficult job, particularly in children's services, and so you can throw money at the problem, but if people don't feel like we are an employer that cares, we're not an employer who engages in new and different ways, I think will continue to fall behind. So what we're doing is investing and trying to rebuild, I think, what was lost over COVID in the meantime to make sure we have a comprehensive, structured training program that provides support to our staff so they feel competent and cared about and are able to do the job well.
That's great. And what about incentives? If an employer, I mean, they do something, do you have incentives that they get something extra? I know we do that with healthcare. If
Sure.
if you go to a certain place, you get an extra. Have we looked into that?
I think as we have a conversation moving into next month, we do have some support. And I just want to say, too, the associations that at the state have been really extremely helpful for the counties with this area in workforce. We're not the only county being affected by this, obviously. But we are working through an opportunity to do that with our child welfare staff now with some incentives for new hires and also retention for our staff. So we're working now with the union on that. And then we will also hopefully consider that in the long term as we have conversations going forward about how that might be able to help our workforce as well. Got to look at the budget, got to look at the number of staff. There's a whole host of things I want to make sure I'm aware of before we make that decision. The first thing we have to do is really look at the wages as we enter this reopener next month across the board for all of our classifications. I think that's the biggest thing we can do, and then continue to think about other incentives.
Gotcha. And then I do want to acknowledge the self and the administrator and our board. We're going to be hosting an appreciation for, I think it's the first time, maybe the first time ever, this type of appreciation. We've got to have those kind of things. So we are happy to support it. My last question is, well, I got 2 questions. One, you mentioned how we get funded federally. And could you go over that one more time? You're saying there's random
moment
pops
sample.
up.
Well, it's a piece of paper
That's a piece of
that the
paper.
state has developed that all counties get for every position and classification that the state funds, and they track the activities of those staff randomly throughout the year, and they use that to make a determination about the allocation for the upcoming year. So that's how they determine the work that's being done and the allocation for each county based on those random moment samples.
Okay, and you said that's very important, that you can't be out at the bathroom or
Well,
whatever.
yeah.
My point is, how have we done?
We do really good in that area, so I don't have concerns about that. We try to make sure that staff understand the importance of that and what they mean, what the implications are in terms of our budget and our allocations. And so, again, I think COVID has had an impact. Working remotely has had an impact on that. So we're really trying to make sure that we can bring everybody back together, have regular all-staff meetings, have these conversations and discussions about how their work can impact our financial health.
Gotcha. And then on the levy side of things, you've got the new programs, and I won't go all into them, but you have the kinship and the youth services, et cetera. But in there, at that particular levy, there was an increase at one point, not recently.
Yes.
And we had gotten a report that there was money that had not been utilized. I
Okay.
can't remember how much it is.
Okay.
I don't want to throw out numbers, but I thought it was a pretty high number, I don't know, very high number,
Okay.
very high. And, I really want to examine that, and I know that you put some additional, but based on the number that I heard it was, and then I added up this additional, we're still not even hitting the surface, and, people are not at a point where the money can just be sitting around. Now, this
Right.
didn't come, you came in,
Right.
you just got here.
Right.
But I want to put on record that I'm going to definitely look at that and see if there's opportunity for maybe a refund to people if we're not using it. People need a refund. They might need some type of refund that comes back to them if we're not spending this, because this is a lot of money, and we still can do these increased things you're saying without even touching the surface of the amount of money that's sitting over there that we haven't been able to utilize, even with the new services. So I just wanted to highlight that, and to also note that the 513 relief, which is basically mobile services, not just rent assistance and those kind of things, that will also be able to continue to operate, but that's out of a different pot of money,
Correct.
because it's not in your presentation.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct. We will staff that, support that with all of the existing programs and services that we already provide. That's already ready to go.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Dreehouse.
Thank you. Thank you, Director Patton, for being here. I just want to note that I think beginning last year, started to take an all-funds budget
Right.
approach to budgeting. And so I was scanning through the material, and correct me if I'm wrong, but there's no general fund impact when we talk about your budget, because you did delineate from whence your funding is coming. but
Correct.
There's no general fund money here. So I just.
That's correct.
For anybody that is looking, because we're going back and forth here a little bit with general fund impact and not general fund
Right.
impact. So, I just want to put that out there. So I just wanted to highlight some of the things that are in your presentation, and thank you for yourself and others that preceded you being responsive to some of the priorities of the community related to the levy dollars, particularly kinship care. And ask you, so I know that Hamilton County was the first in the state to offer that stipend. Has the state stepped in with any money?
They do have Ken Gap, and I don't want to misspeak here, but they have done something after we started that process in Hamilton County, very similar to that. I don't want to give too many details because I don't want to misspeak, but the state does provide a similar benefit with the same thought that Ken need to be reimbursed at the same rate or a similar rate.
I thought they had done something.
Yeah, they
I just
have.
want to make sure that we're using their dollars before we
We
use our
are.
dollars.
We are.
For the same purpose. And I'm glad we're up to the amount that the foster parent gets, because that's
Yes.
where we were headed. We got there gradually, but thank you for getting us there. The Office of Family Voice is something else that we heard about
Yes.
to help the parents whose children are in care
Yes.
to do what they need to do to get those children back into the home.
Correct.
So I think that's extremely important. It was a high priority of the citizens when we went through one of the levy processes. The Divert program is near and dear, I think, to all of us. So I'm grateful that that was part of your presentation to help those that are victims of domestic violence. And also the emancipated youth piece, that's really important. And I'm noting that you're just getting started with that to try to transition those youth from care into independence, and a recognition that that takes a little bit of doing. And so we're there to try to help assist in that transition for those young people. So I just want to note some of the things that I think this board has made a priority and the citizens have made priorities through some of our public hearings. I wanted to just, my last thing is about pay, because pay is so much of the budget and so much of the concern when it comes to not only Child Protective Services, but all the other services related to JFS. So we have been able to make some increases related to the hourly rates of employees, and we've done it in a couple different ways over the last few years. So I heard Commissioner Reese talk about this. You know, I too am anxious to know, beyond pay, flexibility in scheduling, change, or not changing the culture, but making sure there is a culture of appreciation and support for those employees. So when did you say the reopener was?
We're trying to get it scheduled starting next month.
Okay, all right.
Well,
we will look-
this month.
Yeah.
It's September, right?
This is September, yeah.
We're trying to get it scheduled starting this month.
Okay, all right, because we have done, from my vantage point, a lot to make sure that, especially those frontline intake workers are fairly compensated, because we know the job is difficult, especially during COVID. And so I just want to go on record to say that, we want to be supportive. We've done what we thought was appropriate. Heroes Pay is another example of this. So whenever, we can be helpful related to retaining employees, I think we all stand at the ready to be able to do whatever we can to help with that.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Commissioner.
Thanks. I just wanted to make a comment. I know the branding changed about 2 years ago, the colors and all of that. It's awesome. But also, I meet people who used to work for JFS. I'll never go back to JFS. And then I tell them JFS is different now. And so I see it as being different from the previous directors to certainly you. And I think we all need to be advocates for JFS. Think about all the employees that you have. And I just thought about the possibility of incentives for if someone comes in to apply for, and you just mentioned about incentives, somebody comes in to apply for a job, and you can say, did someone refer you, or did somebody tell you? And then whoever that employee is, they could get a little something, I don't know how much, but if we all start talking and advocating about this is a different JFS, I think it'll help to get more staff.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you very much.
Them, so.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yes,
Just very briefly, to tag on to Commissioner Dreehouse's point, Commissioner Dreehouse was 100% correct that about a year ago, we started taking a little bit different approach to the budget, just in terms of how we would present it. As an all-funds budget, we used to have the general fund budget and the restricted fund budgets separately. We started presenting them more of an all-funds budget because the budget is just so tied together programmatically in so many different ways. The interaction of JFS on the programmatic policies and initiatives of the board, community development, block grant funding, all those things that tie in just really to all the things that the board is trying to do. But as it relates specifically to the JFS budget, it is absolutely correct. We don't typically refer to it as a general fund, departments, restricted fund, funded through local dollars, as well as state and federal reimbursements. But I just, in terms of tying it completely up, there is interaction between the general fund and Job and Family Services, especially as we have general fund offices and agencies that carry out certain programs or activities that fulfill the mission of JFS. A lot of these in the courts, where there actually are payments from JFS to ensure that these things are done efficiently on behalf of the clientele that JFS serves. So I just wanted to make sure that that interaction was tied up.
Thanks for pointing that out. Really important point. All the contracts we have through our state and federal funding and allocations go through those organizations to provide support for the families that we serve in some way. So through the courts, clerk of courts handling our paperwork, our filings, Sheriff's Department providing security, doing warrants for child support. So we spend a lot of money with local government through our state and federal allocations that do, I think, helps offset what would in some counties would be general fund, depending on how they're structured, would be general fund expenditures.
I was just going to say, I'm glad that, I'm glad that we're doing it as all funds, because at the end of the day, it's still taxpayer money. It's whether you paid state taxes, federal taxes, or if you have a levy. There's a lot of levy money involved in here, where local folks pass the levy for this. So, and then we have to vote on all these contracts. I mean, there's not a contract that goes through that we don't have to have some kind of vote on it and be held accountable. So I think it's great to tie in the all funds. I know it's a complex budget that you have to deal with, but also I think the overall theme, message, and direction that our board and with the administration has put forward, I think it's good for people to say, here is the direction. Now, there's different ways we're funding it, but here's the direction that we want to go because of the safety net that JFS provides. So I'm glad we're doing it this way. I think it's easy for people to follow along, understand, and it breaks down these silos. It gets us to a place of, here's the vision, here's the direction, and we have different ways we have to achieve it. So I think that's a great idea, the way we're doing it. So thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So much. We'll move forward. Board of Elections, Sherry Poland and Alex Linzer. That name sounds familiar, both of them.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Sherry Poland, Director of the Board of Elections.
Alex Linzer, Deputy Director.
As we do everything in a bipartisan manner at the Board of Elections, we'll be presenting this to you together today. And we appreciate the opportunity to present our 2023 proposed budget. And the clicker. So we're going to start out by giving you an overview. As you can see from the slide, our 2023 proposed budget is less than our current 2022 estimated budget. And very recently, the Deputy Director and I have had a discussion with the Assistant Administrator, Mr. Bruggen. We're actually going to be reducing that proposed budget by another $500,000. And that's because of a reduction in the overtime needed in an odd year election cycle. So this will be in line with odd year election cycles. We have less elections, we have lower turnout. Therefore, our proposed budget is less than our current budget in 2022. I will note there are 2 projects that we would like to implement in 2023, and the funding for those projects is included in our proposed budget. I'm sorry, I thought you were doing the phone system. One of which is an upgrade in our phone system. We have been in contact and received quotes from Cincinnati Bell. Estimated cost is about $110,000. Our current phone system is outdated. We last had an upgrade 10 years ago in 2012. So that's aging in the realm of technology. We would like to increase this before the presidential election in 2024. You know, we know that we will see an increase in calls coming in a presidential year throughout the entire year. So we want to make sure we have the infrastructure in place to handle those calls. And we want to implement that in 2023, where we have a lighter turnout, lesser calls. That way staff has time to become accustomed to the new equipment and to work out any glitches. We never want to introduce anything new in a presidential year if we do not have to.
The other project, excuse me, I'm going to adjust the microphone here. The other project is a new vehicle. Currently, we have a cargo van that is 10 years old. We use that to move election equipment around and to deliver mail. However, we would like to upgrade to a vehicle that's capable of carrying both cargo and personnel. This is going to support our new community engagement programs that we're going to be embarking on in 2023. We're going to be sending Board of Elections staff out into the community at major community events to do things like voter registration and recruiting poll workers. Those are the 2 big projects that we're contemplating for next year. We do have a couple of ongoing challenges we wanted to flag for the board. Primarily, this headline from Politico, local elections officials are exhausted, under threat, and thinking about quitting. Retention is a huge problem in our industry right now. We have seen since 2020 rampant dis- and misinformation about elections that has turned into very aggressive calls and threats against election officials. It puts an enormous strain on our staff. And in addition to that, this year, our staff have seen 3 elections instead of 2. So anytime we have an election, there's a lot of overtime for our staff. Leading up to that election, we're already doing overtime for the November election now. This year, there's been no break. We had a primary election in May, we had a primary election in August, and we're already into the November general election. So our staff are under a great amount of stress. They are working long hours. We're very grateful that the board gave us some funding last year to do some targeted market rate adjustments, and we have incorporated those into our budget. But as, you know, as the board is considering, you know, with the inflationary pressures that are going on outside of this building, you know, anything that this board can do in terms of that annual cost of living increase, you know, if there was a year to do more than the usual, this is the year. A couple of other ongoing challenges is, like I mentioned, we are becoming more sophisticated in our communications and community engagement work. We are also facing new and more complex cybersecurity threats. With that is coming more requirements from the state in terms of our cybersecurity regime. But also for us, that means we need to hire employees who have that skill and expertise to maintain these new secure systems. And those are people with a lot of options. And especially right now, the market for them in the workforce is very competitive. And so we have some ongoing sort of budgetary pressure in what we are able to offer those folks in order to keep and you know, maintain those newer, more sophisticated systems. And that, we were asked to be brief, so we are brief. But we are, of course, happy to answer any questions.
Now, we have to be brief. But anyway, I thank you for your presentation. I mean, you guys are to be applauded that you come in with a lower budget, and it's going to get even lower. And so that's a good thing. But I'm a little concerned about what you were saying about challenges, about staff being exhausted under the threat of quitting, and wondering when your personnel budget goes down, you're not thinking that you need, that people won't be overworked, in other words, because you're reducing the number of your amount that you're allocating for personnel.
Yeah, well, our personnel budget does contain a lot of temporary work for temporary workers and for overtime. And so, you know, this year we've had an excessive amount in both of those categories because we have had that third election kind of crammed in. So that's meant a lot more temporary workers in our office and a lot more overtime. And so next year, with it being a municipal election, there won't be a primary in every county, so we just won't have the need to bring in as many temporary folks, and we won't have the need for as much overtime. So that's what that reduction reflects. It doesn't reflect their base salaries.
Wow, I think it's awesome. One other question, the non-personnel budget that you presented, what is that including other than equipment?
It's voting equipment, it's the printing of ballots, which has become very expensive. As other departments have mentioned, the cost of paper and printing has gone up a great deal. Also, some of our key systems have shifted from a sort of a capital expense to an ongoing expense, chiefly our voter registration system.
Okay.
So in the past, we had purchased that software, you know, for a big lump sum up front and then used that software for years. We are in the middle of implementing a new voter registration system, and that will be on a subscription model. So that will be coming in at about $500,000 a year. And we've worked with the budget office on a strategy that draws from our technology reserve fund, so that's not all hitting the general fund.
Wow, that's great. Thank you so much. Vice President Reese.
Thank you. Very good news. Wanted to ask about poll workers. I know we're always graphic, and I share it like, we need them. Everybody's like, we need poll workers. Is that in this budget, or do we see there needs to be an increase, or where are we at with that? Are we good financially with poll workers?
Well, you know, poll worker compensation is set by state law. We do everything we can to, you know, in terms of what we pay them for training and reimbursing them for gas and stuff, to give those people as much as we can, because they do a great service for the workers of Hamilton County. We're very grateful to this board for adopting the policy of granting an additional day of PTO. And actually, I did bring with me a flyer encouraging county workers to serve as poll workers. County workers make some of the best poll workers because they understand complex government systems and, you know, how to serve the public, because that's what we do here in Hamilton County. So that is included in our non-personnel budget. We will need fewer poll workers next year because of the smaller primary, but it's always our biggest project and our biggest concern. Anything you guys can do to help us spread the word about the need for poll workers is greatly appreciated.
I just wanted to add that several county agencies followed your lead and also adopted a similar poll worker leave policy, allowing county employees that fall under their jurisdiction to receive that personal day. So we appreciate you leading the way on that.
Awesome.
Now, our early vote center, which I'm extremely proud of, I think it's certainly a state model. It's me saying that. You might not be able to say it, but I'm saying it. But then being able to utilize that during COVID and having it be able to be functional for our Department of Health, did that increase any, because normally it would be shut down, right? Or I don't know how that affects your lease or.
Yeah,
does it?
that is correct. It did affect our lease, but you funded that for this year for our budget. It also has affected, we've just noticed an increase in our electric bill. So we are actually working with John and seeing how we can, so that we don't have to absorb that entire cost into our budget, and it can be shared with a public health department, so.
Okay. Oh, they have, good. Yeah, that's what I was wondering. I said, were there extra costs that would roll over that we would have to think about? Okay, and then the last thing is your outreach part of the van, which I'm all for mobile. When our bus is done, one of the things I wanted to do, and the administrator talked about this, is working with different departments who may want to utilize it. I know we have a National Voter Registration Day because they don't have a lot of technology in that bus. So I wanted to put that out there, certainly wanted to work with you all, and you could have it and do what you need to do for that point. But also, you talk about a robust outreach program, and I'm very interested in that. Is this just cost for the van, or is it also for the program?
Yeah, so the cost, asking our budget is really just for the van, which we need to upgrade our 10-year-old van
Right.
for its current use as well, but we want to upgrade to one that will also support this function, which has already kind of worked into our budget. We just rearranged our staff a little bit. We created a new IT position, and we created a new communications position, so we now have 2 people in communications. We rotated people around, so we're using existing positions for that, so it didn't affect our overall FTE. But into the next year, we have planned to do more outreach into the community. So there are big touch points where the Board of Elections needs to interface with the public. That's voter registration, absentee ballot requests, and recruiting poll workers. And so we want to take that directly to the people. Send our staff out to community events and places where there are large gatherings of voters so that we're present and they can engage with us there. And of course, we would be happy to partner with you on getting some paperwork for the bus as well. Yeah.
Great. I just need to know if there's an additional cost for the programming on your non-personnel for that program, or you're going to do it within existing?
Yeah, we're going to use our existing budget for that.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Commissioner Dreehouse.
Thank you. Thank you both for being here. It's a turn of the tables a little bit here, Alex. But it's good. It's good. Thank you for the presentation. Thank you, Sherry. So I just have a couple of things of note. So when you said that you are paying employees, are they all up at $15 an hour now?
Yes, we increased our seasonal starting rate from $12 to $15 an hour last year. So,
Okay.
and then there's a bump up based on years of experience.
Okay. All right, just, we've done similar work, so I want to applaud that. The other thing, and I do note, I went through the chart with your expenses. You can see that in 2022, relative to that 4-year cycle, was quite a bit higher than the other 4-year cycles because you had one additional election in 2022. And I am worried for you about that, and about what you talked about, which are these outside pressures that are being put upon boards of elections in general, but your employees in particular, and what might be still coming. So have you in any way allocated or reserved, I don't know how that translates into a budget impact, But I do wonder if there are things that we are not even anticipating at the moment that might impact your operations and hence your budget. So have you all thought through that? And if you have, what is your thinking?
I'll go first. So the state did provide some grant funding to help defray the cost of the extra election this year. So as that shakes out, I think the 2022 budget by the end of the year will end up looking pretty healthy. The increase in calls, the duplicative and nonsensical public records requests that get sent to Board of Elections, this is happening nationally, but we don't have a choice whether or not to respond to a public records request, whether it makes sense or not. We have to respond to that. And it is a great toll on our staff, and it means that people who would be doing other work preparing for the election are now instead responding to these false claims of impropriety that are being driven by people spinning mis and disinformation about elections officials. So it really is a staff, like a resource problem in terms of how we deploy our staff, but it's a nationwide program. Our best way to combat it is with our new community engagement programs. We are trying our best to put as much good information out there about voting and about election systems so that we can sort of inoculate our community against some of the mis and disinformation. In fact, this year, 2 national organizations have given our board awards for our communications efforts. The Election Center, which is the National Association of Elections Officials, and the Election Assistance Center, which is a federal agency that supports elections officials.
Just to add a little bit to that, we do believe that the state grant that we receive for the second primary election will cover the entire cost of that second primary. It's still all flushing out through the budget, but it should cover the entire cost of that. Just to add a little bit to your concerns about election officials, just as Alex mentioned, this is, nationwide. We're doing several things. One, I currently serve as the Vice President of the Ohio Association of Election Officials. We're actually having a meeting next Monday with our entire association to sort of talk through this and what are some things we can do. We were fortunate that we created this new communications and compliance department because we now have somebody dedicated to addressing the public records request, which is sort of the biggest issue we're facing right now. We were able to create this new department without creating new positions, basically because of online voter registration that went into effect several years ago. Online registrations or updating of your registration is a much quicker process for our staff than processing the paper forms. So that's reduced the amount of work in that particular department. So we moved 2 positions from that department and put them into this department. I just want to add also some of the other community engagement efforts that we're doing to combat this mis and disinformation is we host behind the ballot tours. We've had one for all the candidates and campaigns that are on the ballot for this November, so they understand what happens election night while they're waiting for the vote count to come through. We also host one for the Girl Scouts. We did one last night. We'll do one next Monday. So again, we're trying to be as transparent as we can to educate the public as much as we can, not only about accessing the system and voting, but how the election is administered, how the votes are tabulated. So we're hoping all of that will help in sort of what elections our officials are facing nationally.
Thank you. So I just want to say that it's clear that you're being efficient with your budget. You're redirecting employees. When you don't need so much here, you put it here. So it's really impressive, the efficiency that you have expressed during this budget discussion. Also, the innovation that you're doing. I love that idea. What a great idea. And if we can help promote those kinds of things, please let us know, because I think, wouldn't the citizenry in general be interested in learning more? And then you dispel some of these myths about what you guys do by way of elections and try to tamp down some of the misinformation that's out there. So I just want to applaud you. And I was going to mention the award, Alex. You stole my thunder. But yeah, you all have received some awards, and so duly noted that your communication efforts are receiving some acclaim. So thank you for the presentation.
Yeah, yes.
Not to go much longer than we have to here, but I do think it's important as we're talking about the Board of Elections budget, if I could ask Assistant Administrator Bergen just to very briefly give a summary of how we go about budgeting the Board of Elections. You've heard from Alex and Sherry the cyclical nature of the budget expenditures for this department. So John, I just think it's important that the public and the board have a bit of an understanding about our level budgeting approach to this department.
Sure, this one is an unusual department in that we sort of do a level billing plan. So we try to find an average number of what we expect the 4-year cycle to cost. And we try to budget that amount every year so that in the lower dollar years, we're putting money aside for the higher dollar years. So we try to keep this pretty level as we go.
Great.
John, it just helps it so that it helps the board and it helps the county. It's not so much of a concern to the department, but it helps us just so we don't have to budget these spikes and valleys periodically. So I just wanted to make sure the board was aware of that approach.
Is that a new approach?
We've been doing it for, yeah.
Okay, that's pretty new, yeah. Thank you guys so much, and as Commissioner Driehaus had indicated, your innovation and how you're just taking the bull by the horns and so efficient in that operation, we certainly need it in that area. So thank you guys so much, and once again, congratulations on your awards. Yes.
I just had two things. One, the innovation and the moving of the different, how you're structured. It would be helpful, I know, for myself, if I could get a org chart, how many employees in these different departments, because we want to share that innovation. Look at our, we want to brag. Look at our Board of Elections. We're very innovative. So if I could get an org chart so I kind of understand how many employees, what we're doing, these new places that you've moved in, cybersecurity, et cetera. And then lastly, before you leave, I think we need to take this opportunity. Could you please tell everyone that's watching, when does early voting start, so that they have that date, so they know that early voting and the hours, because it's getting ready to start. So I thought I'd take advantage while both of you are here.
Yeah, we have a late election day this year. Election day is on November 8th. The last day to update your voter registration is October 11th, and early voting starts on October 12th. Of course, you can request your absentee ballot now, and many, many residents of Hamilton County have already done that. The Secretary of State mailed out applications to every registered voter. You can also download the application from our website, and we are processing them right now.
And can I follow up on that? Because there was a news story about those applications going out from multiple sources. Can you just talk about that for 1 second to clear up any confusions? Because the Secretary of State sent them out, but didn't people receive them from a different organization as well?
Yeah, there is, the Secretary of State has a form that voters can use to request their application. They don't have to use that precise form as long as they include all of the necessary information that's on it. In this case, there is at least one other organization that has mailed out absentee applications. It comes in a mailer that has some messaging about gas pumps on it. We have been able to process those requests. That is the Secretary of State's form on the inside. So if voters use that form, they will get their absentee ballot. But of course, if voter has any question about what they need to do, they can give us a call or they can go on our website and get the correct forms.
Great. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. And those ballots will be mailed beginning October 12th.
Okay, very good. Probate Court, Judge Ralph Winkler, Scott Weichel. Welcome.
Good afternoon. I'm Scott Weichel. I'm the Assistant Court Administrator for the Hamilton County Probate Court. As you all probably know, this is Judge Ralph Winkler, Probate Court Judge. I just want to thank the board for giving us an opportunity to come over today and talk about some of the issues we're having right now in regards to our budget and some issues just the court in general is running across that may cause some budgetary problems in the future. Just by quick background, the Hamilton County Probate Court provides over 80 unique statutory required services to the public. Some of them include assisting in the distribution of assets from estates, providing guardianship for residents who cannot care for themselves, mental health court, name changes and growing families through marriage licenses and adoptions. The probate the probate judge is unique in not only being elected as judge, but he is also the ex officio clerk of our court, meaning we run our own clerk's office. I will be brief, John, I promise. I think I understood the assignment. Just a couple of bullet points here, and I want to talk about a few things. 10% of our cases filed in the mental health court in 2020 were caused, I think, exclusively by the coronavirus. And I think the isolation took a toll on the mental health community, which caused an increase of more cases filed in the court. Those are very expensive cases for the court and for the county. I would like to mention, though, that during the height of the coronavirus, the court remained open to the public. Case volumes slightly decreased at that time by 5% from our yearly average of about 11,000 cases filed. Even with reduction, the court had operational challenges to overcome regarding filing and hearings. Specifically, Zoom hearings had to be created. We expanded our e-filing system. Website expansion had to occur. We had some serious mailing issues, and our self-help desk had some problems at that time. The court was even busier than ever providing those additional services to the community and providing access to the public while we worked through those issues. 15% of our cases increased in just 2021. As the coronavirus slowed, it seemed like the court's cases exploded. People wanted to get out again, and they had to come to the court and file. That, of course, has now caused a backlog in the court. The coronavirus itself impacted the length of time to conclude cases in the court. Specifically, people were missing hearings due to illness and extensions for filing, which were approved by the Supreme Court. So those all have lengthened the time it takes a case to pass through the court. The last part is, currently, we are trending even higher in 2022. Obviously, those numbers are very concerning for the court as we struggle with the backlog we currently have, and the limited resources that we have are being stretched to the maximum. The complexity of our cases. 75% of our case filers are pro se. If you don't know what pro se is, that is the Latin for it means oneself or filing on one's own behalf. As case filings continue to increase, the complexity and time required for these cases is also increased due to the fact that such a large number of cases are filed and litigated by the general public, not attorneys. These require extensive time and resources provided by the court. Pro se filing continues to increase annually, especially now that we have fully instituted e-filing into our court. The court itself has offered a self-help desk for 20 years with no cost to this county. The court has offered a self-help desk to our customers, pro se litigants, and attorneys for 20 years, similar to what the clerk of court started recently, but with no additional cost to the county. Our clerks and magistrates are highly trained, have years of experience, and are helping individuals with some of the toughest issues in their life, all while providing legal information, not legal advice, which, as the law dictates, we are not allowed to provide. As our volume increases, the backlog continues, and pro se filers increase, the court's resources and personnel are stretched to the limit. Rising employee costs. The court's first of all, 85% of our current budget is personnel specifically. The court's non-personnel expenditures have remained fairly flat for several years as the court struggles to remain within budget. Last year, I informed the budget office that we were going to be raising our starting salary to $18 an hour to match the current negotiated contract with the clerk's auto title office. That's a negotiated contract between the county and those clerk employees. So they're earning $18 an hour. We were afraid of losing some of our newer clerks to the open market and to other county agencies when the contract was negotiated. We knew holding a competitive salary to our other county agencies was vital for employee retention. The court was not part of the county's market rate study and have made no adjustments based upon any of those studies. Our current staff averages 18 years of OPER service. That ranges in a wide range from some of our employees have 40-plus years, all the way down to someone that just started within the last year. We have a lot of experience in our court. We know rising health costs are something that we can't contain, the court and the county. That's just something applied to our budget every year, but that is a factor in our budget when we make a request. I'd like to discuss the 3% vacancy rate just quickly, but I really don't think, based upon what I stated in bullet point 2, was we have 18 years of OPER service. This doesn't apply to us many times. Providing a 3% raise to our employees and then taking a 3% vacancy rate away from us basically provides the court with $0 for increases. This has been the case in the past, but the court does whatever is necessary to stay within budget and still provide raises to our employees. That being said, we have some of the happiest county employees, and I would say that that is extremely true based upon their longevity here. We do this providing a team approach, merit-based raises, and having a judge that is seen as their coworker. We truly believe the court is like a family. Lastly, I want to talk about raises just briefly for a moment, and that is, as the Consumer Price Index trends to 8.5% for the previous 12 months, and with Social Security projecting to give a 9% increase this year, we need to provide better than a 3% increase in the salary adjustment line this year. We need to help our employees during this difficult time. During the recession, our employees stood with us while receiving no raises. Now it is a time to invest in our greatest asset in the county. That's our employees. Additional personnel. This year we added a guardianship investigator. The court needed to add this position in 2022. The court has been asking for this position for many years from the general fund and even in our indigent care levy requests. And it has been constantly turned down and unfunded. The TLRC knew we had an issue that had to be addressed during the mid-levy review period this year, or 2.5 years ago, and completely acknowledged that fact when they recommended the reimbursement during the upcoming levy cycle. So the levy will be, when it's renewed by the voters, will be funding this new position. Second, we had to add a half of a magistrate position. We previously had a part-time magistrate. We had to add to a full-time magistrate. We had to move to that full-time magistrate just to keep up with the increased volume that I discussed previously and the backlog of hearings that we have currently in the court. As I stated before, we increased our starting pay to $18 an hour for our staff. And lastly, we still believe the court's understaffed by 10%. And I'm not requesting that this year, but I think it's something that needs to be considered in the future as we continue to battle the backlog and the additional case filings. Even with the increased needs we have highlighted, the court has not asked for any additional positions. Why, you may ask? It's strictly due to the history regarding the guardianship investigator position we have requested. The court previously had one guardianship investigator on staff. With over 600 filings annually and over 4,000 open guardianships, the court believed it had more than a compelling case for an additional position. When no action was taken, we believed any additional requests would fall upon deaf ears. The court believes we should have, at a minimum, 46 FTEs. We currently have 42. Again, I'm not asking for additional than we have now. I'm just saying that's something we need to consider in the future. The court's 2023 budget request is $226,416 more than the 2022 approved budget. I would attribute $125,000 to the investigator position and the half magistrate we added, and then $65,000 to the increase in medical and dental. that we cannot control. That really leaves a difference in what we're asking for of $36,000. Just a couple things quickly to note. The probate court is fiscally conservative. There's no doubt about that. If you would look at our numbers in any previous year for the last 20 years. We've increased our revenue by 12% over the last 5 years. Some of that was done by policy the judge instituted when a law was changed in the state of Ohio where we could bill other counties for our mental health costs. So every time a resident from another county comes into Hamilton County under a civil commitment, mental health case, I bill them back. They refund that money to us. We deposit that in the general fund. We've also tried to squeeze every dollar we could from what is legally allowed by the court. But I would like to say that the general filing structure of the court, as allowed by law, the fee structure, has not been changed in over 30 years. So that's difficult for the court to increase any more revenue. That's all dictated by the Ohio Revised Code. Additional indigent care levy funds will offset our costs. Previously mentioned regarding our new guardianship investigator position, which will be funded by the indigent care levy when it's renewed, that's $65,000. We also have an additional $75,000 coming to cover mental health costs. That's a total increase of $140,000 in revenue this year just from the indigent care levy, which was, I'd like to thank the Levy Review Committee to understanding the difficulties we're going through and funding those as we requested. We've never asked for additional funds or gone over budget in more than 20 years. I have personally been involved in the court's budget for 20 years. And we do not go over the budget approved by the commissioners or ask for additional funds during the year. We request what we actually need to operate. We've had a great working relationship with over 20 years with the budget department, specifically John, some of my analysts, Rob, Jen, who was in here before, Lisa, and now Cheryl, and the county administrator, Jeff, and I look forward to working with them in the future. We've had a very good relationship, and I appreciate that. The court itself has returned over $2.9 million in the last 20 years to the county. We don't overspend our money. We've also spent $5.5 million of our own restricted fund money to cover costs not necessary for the general fund to cover. For example, if we did remodeling projects, we covered that or covered portions of it. Bought furniture, carpet, made payments to guardians and attorneys, computer equipment, software, vehicles. We bought the original magnetometer for our building, and we've transferred money back to the general fund to cover when they need money. As I said, we've done everything we can do to help and stay within budget, and we continue to do that, and we will do that into the future. Does anybody have any questions?
Thank you so much for your presentation. Just a few comments. I noticed on the complexity of cases, you mentioned about the pandemic, how that has impacted your cases. You have 75% of the court filers are pro se. Is that an increase?
Yes, it continues
How much of
to.
an increase is that?
Over the last 10 years, I would say that we've probably increased 15%. And part of that is not just the coronavirus, but also because the court is now e-filing all of our case types. So it's much easier for people to file with the court.
Okay, very good. And another question about the market rate adjustment study. You said you weren't involved in that. Did you
That's
want
correct.
to be involved, or how did that not happen?
I don't think it was ever.
It was
You're
all,
not-
the market rate adjustment was entirely under the Board of County Commissioners. We've been working independently and individually with different departments from separately elected offices.
Okay, thank you. And I hear you saying you have 42 FTEs. You, in the future, going to look toward 46. And so I'm glad that you're letting us know in advance what you're
Yes.
thinking about doing. And I also appreciate the money that you've brought back. And so thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Vice President Reese.
Thank you for your presentation. Just wanted to, I've got some of the responsibilities of probate court. I just want to, You also appoint to the park board, because I know people were asking us, like, we don't have a county park board, but you appoint those, and they have their own ability, or does that have to come through probate court when they want to do a tax on the ballot, increase or whatever?
Your Honor.
They decide on the levy. They let me know ahead of time, but I don't have a lot of input on that. Some judges around the state have a lot of input, but I appointed 5 people to run the parks, and I trust them. I don't want to ever be heavy-handed. So on the last levy that passed, I did not have any input on that except to be told. Now I do have a meeting with the director of the parks, Todd Palmer, once a month. So he has gone over the master plan with me, and that they will be seeking a renewal of a current levy, not an increase in 2026. But we have one person going off the park board in December, and I'm already working to find a replacement. So if anybody has any ideas that's listening, or anybody else, I have a couple candidates that are interested already. And then there's one person on my park board, Stacy DeGraffenreid. If she wins the juvenile court election, I would be replacing 2 people this December. So I let them be pretty autonomous. I have to say on the one levy that they withdrew in 2020, I was involved with that because there was a lot of media attention to that, and I gave some advice, but I let them make the final decision to withdraw the levy at that time.
Yeah, no, I wasn't asking about this specifically, the levy. I just wanted people to know, a lot of people think that we make those appointments. That actually, probate judge makes all appointments
Right.
to the parks. It's just interesting how county government's set up.
We have one appointment to CMHA, and I have 2 appointments to the disability to the board. I've left the member that's been on there a long time, so if someone's doing a good job, I don't take them off.
I got you. Okay. Well, that's good to know. That's another area that comes out of the probate court. A lot of people didn't know
Right,
that.
it's kind of an amazing court. You have a busy day, but I'll go through all 80 functions right now if you want me to.
No, I think, Judge, I think we're fine. I think
I don't know if I could.
I had to have the president hit the gavel on you. You'll only be the second person that got gavel besides myself. No, that's good. The other thing is, you mentioned on here about giving back, and, I've been around a long time, and giving back, and even us, when we got money from Washington, you said, don't give it back, because then they said they need it, that means you didn't need it. And last year, was there anything given back, or this more so like years in the past?
I think we were between 2% and 3% we gave back last year we have a very small budget. We only have about $4 million, so 2 or 3% is pretty small compared to what is our county budget, $290 million general fund?
Yeah. Well, don't give it back if you need it. Hold on to it. But no, we also understand, we've been working through this as relates to employees and trying to keep good employees. We understand that, and we started with the employees that fall up under the board as the beginning part of it. But we understand that, packages in terms of incentives, there's a number of things that new employees want more than just money. They want, they want the whole work-life balance and go to work and enjoy it. So we are, I just want to say, I think our administrator is looking into this and trying to work through these issues as well. So that's all I had, Madam President.
Thank you. Commissioner Dreehouse.
Thank you. Thank you both for your presentation. Just to follow up on that, so we have heard, I think every department that's come in here today has talked about, and last week or last time we heard as well, about market rate, because we suffered for so long not having the ability to pay competitive wages. We are trying to lift the county out of that position. We've done it internally when with what we have jurisdiction over, supported by all three of us. And so if there is an effort on behalf of your court to do the same, I think you're hearing that, we would support that within reason. But to that point, when you talk about the increase in wages, so are you suggesting that you are at market rate now with the employees that you have?
I wouldn't know that. I haven't seen the study that was done by the county, first of all. And secondly, I don't know if the company that did your study is the right company to do that. I mean, there is a company, the National Center for State Courts, that focuses strictly on state government courts, and they come in and do those types of studies. I'm not saying we need to do that.
Maybe
I'm
it's
just saying it's a
time to
discussion maybe
do a
we
study.
have between county administration and the court to find the right balance between the two.
Well, and we did, we took a very objective view of this. We had a professional group come in and do the study, so it wasn't just us thinking, oh, I think so-and-so needs a raise. Yeah, I mean, that's just not how we approached it, because we are living within the constraints of our budget. It's not a huge budget. It is more than it has been in the past, but it is not a huge amount of money to run this county government related to the sales tax, just to be clear. I don't mean to give the impression that we've got all this money. I think, and I don't know how many other courts we will hear from, I guess all of them, but if a market rate study is in order, I mean, we took that very seriously at a time where we need to keep employees, as do you, and you just talked about the retention that you have. I think you guys have a very interesting setup at your court. I do think it operates like a family. I mean, I've been over there a number of times, and people are very dedicated to the purpose of the court and what you all do, and I applaud you for that. But that said, I do think people need to be compensated appropriately related to market rate with our competitive set. So I would wonder if we'll hear from you next year that you have done a market rate study, you do know where your employees lie,
Right.
and you're going to make some adjustments related to that, within reason, but adjustments related to that.
I understand that. I
Yep.
agree.
And Madam President, we can certainly talk approaches with the court on this. I know Cheryl, the budget analyst, is currently looking at salaries over in the court. The mechanism that we used for our market rate adjustments, as Mr. Weichel indicated, did not include employees over the court. It was very targeted at the specific employees on a job classification basis underneath the Board of County Commissioners. So to Mr. Weichel's point, maybe the mechanism that we used would have that information. Maybe there's another mechanism that's needed. We could have that conversation.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you guys so much. I appreciate it. Okay, last but not least, Court of Appeals, Julie Nessler. Hi, thank you for being so patient.
Absolutely. Learned a lot so far today.
Okay.
Let's see. The clicker. Well, good afternoon. My name is Julie Kars-Nessler. I am the court administrator for the First District Court of Appeals. I want to first thank the commissioners, Administrator Ludo and Mr. Brueggen, for inviting me here today to talk and share a bit about the Court of Appeals plans for 2023. So just briefly, the First District is one of the 12 appellate districts in Ohio. Our jurisdiction covers all of Hamilton County. We hear appeals from all of the trial courts in this county, including the Common Pleas General Division, Domestic Relations, Municipal Court, Probate Court, and Probate Court is the last one. We also do hear some original actions in our court. On average, the court takes about 750 new filings each year. The Supreme Court of Ohio funds our personnel budget, so the court actually looks to the county only for our operational needs, and so that's what I'm going to be focusing on this afternoon. When I was before the board last year, I explained that 2021 was really a year of growth for us. 2022 has continued our court's focus on modernizing our technology and enhancing our county constituents' interaction with the justice system, specifically at the appellate level. And it's our intend and we believe that 2023 is actually going to be a business as usual for the new modernized court for us. So just as a little bit of an overview, although the year has not yet ended, our estimated expenses are roughly about $140,000. And our current budget request for 2023 is $115,000. It's roughly a 20% decrease from this year's current budget. I'd like to really just highlight two main areas that the court sees as kind of our main, most important of the court's operational needs for next year. First, it's really related to our court's technology needs. As I said, many of our expenses do relate to supporting and continuing them and maintaining these new technology advancements that we have implemented in 2021 and 2022. These programs are really important to the court. We have added some additional services to Hamilton County residents by way of our website, and we currently stream all of our cases online, and it's important to us that we continue providing those services to Hamilton County. So as you can see on the slide before us, the maintenance and support for our courtroom recording equipment, which allows us to stream our proceedings to our YouTube channel and to our website, the maintenance cost for that equipment and software is $3,200. Additionally, we did implement a brand new website this year, and there is an additional cost for hosting and support of that website, and it's approximately $3,500. Additionally, this year we just moved to Microsoft Outlook, so we have a new operating system for our email as well as updated Microsoft licensing for all of our court employees. And that's going to be a cost at the court to maintain that licensing of about approximately $10,000. And then finally, for 2023, or for this year, we are working on implementing a new terminal server project. It's currently underway, but we have found that we need some additional cable management, some switches, and replacement laptops to fully implement that plan. And so that cost is roughly about $10,000. So those are some of the technology advancements that we're looking to continue in 2023. And then our second real main highlighted area, I think just sitting here this afternoon, it's really clear that it's important for Hamilton County that we have talented staff members that are interfacing with the public. For the court, we have a 30-member staff. The court employs 18 attorneys, excluding the judges, and it's important that we retain quality staff in order to ensure that we timely and efficiently resolve the cases that are before the court. And so one piece of that we feel is to ensure that we continue to secure talented staff, provide quality training for them, and also not only training, but allow them to interact with those throughout the state through by way of roundtables and other meetings with other members in similar districts in their positions throughout the state. One thing that we are seeing with regards to training and meetings is that there really is a return and a focus to in-person programming. We did see in 2020 and 2021, it was really a focus on training and meetings being virtually. While that is still somewhat of an option, we have seen an increase in programming returning to that in person. So we're looking to ensure that we can provide that training and meetings and the associated travel for our staff. Finally, we did also receive an extra personnel position from the Supreme Court, and so because of that, we think that we're going to need some additional furniture to ensure that all of our staff members have good working furniture to work from. So we have requested about $12,500 associated with that furniture. And then finally, just some $14,000 related to supplies and printing costs. The court has really making an effort to move things electronically. Like I said, we did upgrade to Microsoft Outlook, and we're moving things internally to more of a focus on email and transmitting things amongst our employees through that mechanism. However, we currently still use a lot of paper between the clerk of courts and our court. So while I'm sure that's something that we're going to continue to take a look at to see what we can reduce printing and paper costs, as of right now, we've focused on the internal piece of it. And so we're hopeful that that will reduce here in the future. So those are our two highlights. And then just an overview. This is just kind of a high-level view of kind of everything that's included in our budget for next year, our request. As I've kind of already I've talked about each of these pieces within those two budget or within those two main areas. So with that, I am the last one, so I'm trying to keep it brief for you guys. What questions can I answer for you?
Thank you so much for your presentation. That's really a unique situation where staffing is funded by someone else and we provide the operating costs. So I don't really have any questions, but thank you for your presentation. Vice President Reese.
Thank you for your presentation. Just want to go over on the training and travel side. We're at almost 30,000. And then but then memberships is 17,000.
Oh, yeah.
Can you kind of go over that training? Is that, I know you're saying more in-person training. What type of training is it for the new software or is it training for the actual position or?
Sure. So I apologize, I did skip over the subscription memberships. What that is that covers the membership portion of that. That covers all of the bar fees for the attorneys that are on our staff. So like I said, we do have 18 attorneys that the court does. Historically, the county has paid for those bar fees. In addition, we do have some subscriptions to some bar books through the library, through our library. That's covered in that portion. The training and related travel, we try to give each member of the staff a small budget to work with to cover continuing legal education, and then as well as, as you can imagine, a lot of trainings occur in Columbus or Cuyahoga County or some traveling, and so we, of course, encourage our staff to take advantage of free continuing programs that are offered that are local, but every now and again there are other programming. So that's for each of our employees. We do offer them a small budget for them to utilize in order to kind of increase their skills. The training related to our technology, that's been more in-house. We've had kind of the vendor train one of us, and then we do the training for the rest of the staff.
Okay, thank you. And it's good to see the hardware, software. You had mentioned that last year.
Yes.
And it's good to see that continues to move forward to
Yes.
upgrade and bring us up to speed with today's society.
Yes, we're very excited about it. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner Dreehouse.
Thank you for your presentation. It's not because you're last, but I don't have any questions. I think this is very self-explanatory, and I appreciate your presentation. Thank
No
you.
problem. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. So we will move forward. We have item 2 and 3. Can I read them once since they're the same? Okay. I'd like to make a motion to go into executive session. We have items 2 and 3 to RC Section 121.22 G4 to discuss collective bargaining.
Second.
Commissioner Summer Adumas?
Yes.
Commissioner Reese?
Yes.
Commissioner Dreehouse?
Yes.